Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special episode of the 107 podcast with myself, Jacob, and my co-host, Ash. Today, we are joined by a very special guest in the form of Charlie Gates, who is currently interning, is that right, interning at
Yep, that's the
Alpine.
one. Yeah,
So, welcome, Charlie. Thank you for spending some
thank
time
you.
with us this evening.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, of course. The fact that you're willing to give up an hour of your time is amazing already. So, again, thank you.
That's no problem.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background as to who you are and why, our listeners might enjoy hearing
Yep,
your insights.
sure. So my name's Charlie. I'm 21 years old. I'm a student at the University of Edinburgh studying mechanical engineering. I'm spending a year away from university this year working at BWT Alpine F1 team in the quality and supply chain departments, looking after various bits and pieces and carrying out different projects.
Awesome.
Nice.
And
Yeah, go ahead, Jacob. No, no.
I think we're probably reading from the same document as well, where we have these questions. But so you're in education. Could you tell us a little bit more about the education that you're doing? Because I know that a lot of people that we have that listen to this
Yeah,
desperately want to, work in Formula One. So
yeah. So I started at the University of Edinburgh in 2021, studying BEng, mechanical engineering. I finished 2 years of my degree, and picked up this placement in last summer, after spending a lot of time doing Formula Student and building up kind of my CV and my skill set in engineering and finding the niches of engineering which I enjoy and how that applies to Formula One. So most of my experience of building my CV is through Formula Student at university, which is one of the best things I've ever done. Joining university and doing that. That's just about it, really. Yes, 2 years of 4 already done. So for anyone who's interested, undergraduate degrees, all bachelor's degrees are 4 years in Scotland instead of 3. So I've done 2 years. I've got a year out, and then another 2 years from September.
nice. And so is the is the Formula Student something which is only for I have zero idea what that really is.
Yeah.
Could you give us a
Okay.
little bit of a rundown as to what that actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Formula Student is a international competition. In the UK, it's hosted by the IMechE, which is the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. It is a competition where you are given a set of rules and you're challenged to build a Formula style car. If you look at universities like Coventry or Oxford Brookes, they are particularly apt at it, and they have brilliant facilities, and it really mirrors Formula One in quite an impressive level. Now that I've worked in
Nice.
F1, in that you are working to every team is working to the same set of rules to design a car, and you take it to in the UK, you take it to the competition, which is at Silverstone, and you're in the paddock, which is very cool,
Nice.
and you attempt to get your car through scrutineering and into the race. There's no actual kind of wheel-to-wheel racing, because these are all essentially student-built go-karts.
Yeah.
So there's various events. There's a sprint event. There's what's called a skid pad, which is a figure of 8, and that's a time-based event. So it's it goes from very very basic kind of what's called a space frame, so steel tube chassis, to full carbon monocoques. So it's really impressive, and that takes place. There's competitions all over the world, and some of the competitions are so competitive you have to enter. You have to do a quiz and tests for your team to be able
Wow.
to enter. So things like what's called FSG, so FS Germany. Everyone wants to compete there. The best teams are all in Europe, so you want to go to the European competitions and compete. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully one day.
No, that's amazing, awesome. I genuinely had no idea that was a thing. I presumed that there would be, something like that, but
Sure.
not to that level, and especially not internationally. I just presumed it was like
Yeah.
a British thing,
No,
almost
it's
like British Formula 4 or Formula 3000 or whatever it might be.
No, not quite. It's yeah. No, so it's primarily it's an engineering competition.
Hmm.
There's another side to it. There's an artificial intelligence side, which has 2 classes. So the class that I work with is what's called class 1, which is where an actual person is driving the car.
Yeah.
And the other class is AI. So there's a standard car that everyone uses, and you basically plug a USB in, and it has to kind of self-drive around all these courses and stuff. And I think Edinburgh have won that for the last 3 or 4 years.
Nice.
Nice.
I don't take any credit for that. But
you're part of the alumni soon, so
I've got a few more years, but then I'll start claiming it. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, what's the process then to intern for a Formula One team? How does one apply, and what is the hoops you may have to jump through?
Sure. So it kind of varies on what your role is. So I don't work in a directly technical role, so I'm not a designer basically. So designers and kind of like modelers, so anyone who does any of the maths behind our car, they'll have to do a slightly more technical interview. Certainly at graduate level, it gets more and more extreme, but for an intern, kind of stick in an application as you do with various other teams. I applied to just about everyone on the grid that has something open. So roles like aerodynamics and stuff, you'll be asked to do a few kind of standard quizzes, and that's just a bit of a screening thing. So aerodynamics is generally, you'll be screened first. So there'll be tests that you go through similar with vehicle dynamics. So these more kind of directly technical roles, you will have to do a lot of testing, and then you kind of do 3-4 rounds before you actually get to a physical interview or virtual interview. So but luckily mine's what's called an operational role. So I submitted an application probably January, February. I was actually working in a different internship last summer, and they got in touch and said, can you interview next week? And I did a virtual interview, and then 2 days later I was asked to go for a physical interview. So I went down to Enstone and got to see the Alpine headquarters for the first time, which was very cool, and did the full-on interview with the two heads of departments, and then got a phone call 4 days later saying I got the job. So that's nice. The kind of so kind of you're kind of looking over 3 or 4 months hiring process.
And do you know how many people applied, just to kind of give an idea?
I don't. Pass. Not sure at all. But
No,
I think it's relatively safe to say a fair amount. I know people who applied for the same job that I did and kind of didn't even get to the first interview stuff. So enough people apply, definitely.
Nice.
That's cool.
And so where did the love of like the sport, and I guess obviously your role, I guess in a way, come from? Have you always been into Formula One, or has it developed over a few years? Or
not at all, really, not at all. I was never into Formula One until maybe 2020 during lockdown. I watched Drive to Survive, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And joined university and was kind of into it and watched races and stuff. And then I joined Formula Student, and I was like, wow, okay, there's actually really a lot to this that I enjoy. I definitely enjoy the engineering side more than the sporting side, if that makes sense.
Sure,
yeah. So Formula Student really kind of was the catalyst for my love of Formula One and my love of the engineering behind it. I speak, one of my friends is really into kind of GT racing and stuff, and that doesn't really appeal to me, because there's not the same level of engineering. It's not the same at all. So it's not racing I love, it's engineering I love.
No, it's an engineer sport.
This is true.
Yeah. Can you talk about, you walk in, it's your first day at Alpine.
Yeah.
You are at like literally the highest levels of engineering. What do you see that stands out compared to, appreciate there's not much engineering experience you've had in other companies, but what do you see that stands out, right? We always think it's the best of the best, and you see the videos compared to like your local garage down the road.
Of course, yeah. I guess the kind of pace of everything is what is really quite shocking. So I was very lucky in that, just for a bit of background, that last summer I worked for an engineering company called Atlas Composites, who provide composite components, which are anything that's made out of carbon fiber, basically.
Sure.
So they actually supplied for kind of 3 or 4 teams on the grid. So I was exposed to a lot of Formula One work before I entered there. So I understood the kind of expectations and timelines of what that looks like. But when you're in there, you kind of, there's 4 shifts. People work day shift, night shift, weekends, and weekend nights. So there's always something happening, and it's always very, very busy. So I guess that the sheer speed at which everything moves, and the timelines in which projects are done on is impressive. It's much quicker than university projects, for example, and much quicker than Formula Student projects. So seeing the sheer turnaround of design to production was one of the main things that I found extremely impressive.
I guess just a quick follow up. Do you use Excel?
Yeah. If you are an engineer and you're not proficient in Excel, that's very, very surprised. Everyone uses Excel. Well, so the Williams situation is slightly different. We don't, it's not very common that people use Excel for something of that scale. There's in not at Alpine, but in other places, I've seen Excel sheets, with hundreds of thousands of entries, and they're pretty slow. Whereas a lot of people have much more integrated systems, but everyone uses Excel. It's not a bad thing to use Excel. Excel is very, very, very powerful.
People don't know the world runs on Excel.
You'd be surprised how much can be done on Excel. I certainly use it just about every single day to do something. So
that's cool. I guess just one more question for me before I hand it to Jacob. And what is the mood like in Enstone? Right, the team is not where it's supposed to be.
Sure.
They know that they're not where it's supposed to be. Do you get a sense of the mood, or is it like I said, the pace is just so quick, we're just trying to get better and better and improve and learn?
There's not really enough time to be down about it. It's one of these things that it is what it is. It's not going to change overnight.
Yeah.
We need to, everyone needs to be on the same page. So I think the mood isn't so much like, let's feel a bit sorry for ourselves, because that doesn't really fix anything. And I think certainly with the new leadership in Bruno Faman, his message is very, very clear, in that we don't have time for that. We don't have time to pay attention to what the media say or what the kind of general consensus on us is. We've got to kind of look internally. There's no external factors that put us where we are on the grid. We have to look internally, and we have to spend all our energy on getting better. So that's the kind of attitude that's definitely taken on board, rather than another race weekend. I think people joke about it and people are like, oh no, but it's very, very unified in there.
No, you can see it from the drivers, right? Esteban's constantly on the radio just saying, look, we can do this, we can get better, trying to find the wins. So it shows.
It's the same. It's the same in the factory when drivers speak and stuff. They'll say, we know where we are. There's no kind of shame in where we are. There's no hiding where we are. And we just have to keep pushing, basically. I hear that maybe 20 times a day.
They're not wrong. They're absolutely not wrong.
No, this is true.
Yeah, no, I think that one thing, like a slight follow-up of that as well, is that I wanted to ask how it's been sort of as you've had this experience. Has it made you want to, go back as an actual graduate, or like, is it giving you that hunger to really land a role the next time you finished up?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. I think personally, like, the only real areas I would probably see myself at, like, ending up working in, are like kind of aerospace or motorsport, really.
Sure.
So the turnaround in which, I think what I find really satisfying about working in F1 is it's very, very fresh all the time. All the projects are always new, and there's constant turnover of people and something to do. So there's never kind of these long-term projects that you're just kind of sitting on waiting for people to decide. It's kind of one of the lessons I kind of learned the hard way, was you don't wait for someone to reply to your message. That's not an excuse. If something's slow, you go to their desk and you tell them, please give me this answer. There's no time for waiting for someone to reply. Which was quite a shock.
I wish that more companies were like that from experience. And then, so do you have any like highlights in the roles so far? I know you've only been there for what, I think 8-9 months now.
September 6, 7. Just
okay. So I do apologize, but do you have any highlights so far? Or
I mean, every day is a highlight, to be honest.
That's a great answer. That's really good.
Every day you do kind of have to pinch yourself and be a little bit like, okay, I am really here. I still get quite a lot of imposter syndrome, but I think one of the real things I'm quite proud of, that as in work I've done, is I do a lot of work for the floor. So I look after a lot of that. And that's just a very, very satisfying project to be part of, and kind of hitting those key deadlines and getting good feedback is kind of the highlight, I guess. It's not there's kind of no real thing that I can say, wow, yeah, that one event was amazing. But I suppose as well, I got to work in the operations room for the Las Vegas race, which was pretty incredible.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of a bit of a material highlight, but in terms of overall highlights, just being a part of the whole project and kind of owning my own work and getting good feedback on that and positive praise is it's the highlight of having a job at all, really. But yeah, in F1 context, is pretty surreal.
That's awesome, and it sounds like from the outside looking in, based off of what you just said as well, like that Alpine really do trust and get their interns like properly involved.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think certainly for me, I can very much go and seek out my own work. So if there's something that I think I want to improve or I think could be improved, I can ask the questions to the right people and kind of speak to my manager, and if he's on board, then it's like, yeah, go for it. If you think this will work, and the right people are on board with it, then there's kind of nothing that's stopping you from doing that. There's no kind of real diplomacy inside, because everyone's just trying to be better, and no one's ever going to be annoyed at you for just trying to improve something.
No, that's a really good answer, and I guess that leads me on to, like, obviously you have the role now, but I'm assuming, maybe wrong, that probably isn't like your ultimate end goal. If you had something in mind of like, oh, I want to be, again, like I want to be like front end engineer or anything like that, is there a specific role that you have in mind that you'd love to work towards?
Well, so my main area of interest is composites. So one of the biggest teams in any F1 team will be the composite designers. So they essentially realize the aerodynamicists' surfaces. So for a bit of insight on how that kind of process works, is you get the aerodynamicists will do a lot of work on their end in terms of CFD and wind tunnel and testing, and they collate all this data and they decide on the surface they want, and all you get given are the surfaces as composite designers, and you have to kind of make that real and put together all the infrastructure for it to be able to exist in the car. That's something I find really, really interesting, and I interface a lot with design.
Nice.
And I've been quite up close and personal with what they do, so that's really interesting. And the other side is reliability engineers, who actually do a very different job to what I thought they ever did. You would like to think they just monitor kind of alarm levels, and when it goes into way more detail than that. We monitor, actually don't know if I can say that, but there's a there's a lot.
Let me help you out a little bit. There is like gigabytes and gigabytes of data taken off of a Formula One car at any given point ever, even when it's just sat on the grid waiting to do a formation lap. So I think that there's a lot of data to take into account.
You'd be very surprised as to what kind of data we pull off and what we do with that data, I think is my point here. There's a lot of data that I didn't even realize we would ever monitor. And it's stuff that actually really dictates what the mechanics do between sessions and stuff. So reliability engineers have a very, very important job. They interface between production and trackside.
Yeah.
And they raise all the issues that the car has at the track to the factory, basically, and then assign people to solve it. So those are the two areas. I mean, I would love to go trackside. I think that would be brilliant and amazing. So if I was to put myself in any role, I would definitely put myself as a reliability engineer.
Do you die a little bit inside if the floor gets damaged?
Well,
you're like, our beautiful floor. Why did someone
make a new one?
Yeah. I more die inside when we mess it up internally, because it's not even hit the track and we've already messed something up, and you're like, okay, now we have to redo that. It has, but yes, no, it is absolutely painful when you see a car go off and you're like, oh, please just please be able to keep that floor on. But like you have to kind of give real credit to the guys who are at the trackside. The repairs they can pull off are very, very impressive in very short notice. So even if things do go a bit awry, there's always damage no matter what. There's always damage after a race.
Yeah.
Just kind of the severity on whether we have to scrap that floor off, which is that is painful, but it's more painful when when we do something internally that means that floor is not going to be able to be used at the race that it's intended to be.
Cool. Are there any common's not the right word, are there any misconceptions about working in Formula One? People say, you're working with these brands, you're like, people are traveling around the world, they see the glamour, but they don't understand that's just the front.
I think certainly from who I've spoken to who goes trackside is that it's not actually particularly glamorous to be a mechanic or a trackside engineer. Especially in places like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, you're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go. You go from the hotel to the track, you spend 15 hours at the track and you go back to the hotel. So yeah, that side of it is definitely not as glamorous as it looks. Internally, I think, again, it's not as beautiful and polished as you think it is. Nothing is ever perfect. We strive for it to be, but it's just like any workplace. You have your dream job and it's never going to quite be what you expect. But certainly from what I've seen in various aspects, Formula One, and what I've got friends who work in other places, and it's all the same. Everyone's got the same attitude towards it. Is okay, you think it's going to be beautiful and everything's going to be perfect and polished, but actually that's not the case, and that's okay. Even the best teams are like that. Nothing can ever go exactly to plan, and I think that's quite a nice part, going in and being like, okay, people do make mistakes and that's okay. But it's certainly not as polished would be definitely one of the main misconceptions. If I could tell you everything I would like to tell you, you would definitely get a little more understanding, but just trust me.
I mean, Red Bull proved today, didn't they?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's
proved it today.
It's it's no team has got it nailed. No matter what it looks like from the outside, no team has got the perfect processes to doing what they need to do. But again, that's okay. Every team is like that. So
that's cool.
True. I guess it also gives you that motivation as well. It's like something like I'm trying to think of the right word, but it makes you not scrappy, but like determined, I guess, to do better.
Yeah.
And, like if there's always room for improvement or things or like ways to do something better.
Yeah.
I guess for that type of person who wants to what if we did this, or how about we try that, or I've done this. It would sort of fit better for those kinds of people as well, I'm guessing as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of touching on what I said earlier. If you've got an idea, no one's going to be annoyed at you for proposing that idea. I think that's a common theme. It's not so heavily. A lot of these aerospace companies are dictated by what are called ISO standards. So you have to have certain standards about your workplace to be able to produce stuff that is to be used in aerospace and aviation, whereas F1 is actually nothing like that. The kind of highest standard that you have to hold yourself to is the one that you set yourself. It's not so much you're trying to be a specific way in one area. If there's a different way for things to be done, that's something that you can definitely always look into.
Do you? I wanted to ask as well. Do you work with anyone who has been there for like donkey's years, like 30 years plus type thing, like anything like ridiculous?
Yeah, my direct manager's been there for 38 years.
That's insane.
Wow. Yeah, he worked one other job before.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Is that within the same team? So he's been at Enstone for 38.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's mad. No, I just wanted to wait. It's always interesting to find out.
Yeah. There's a lot of people kind of dot back and forth. A lot of people have been everywhere. So like, I know, people have been all over the place. But yeah, he has been only here and seen everyone.
He's seen some stuff.
Yeah, he he was here when the bailiffs came and started taking stuff, and he's been here through thick and thin, I guess. But so I like to, his opinion is often the one I hold more true than anyone else's.
Perfectly understandable. That's a brilliant legacy to have for sure.
Maybe some slightly more fun stuff. Kind of, what's your favorite track on the calendar? Do you look at it differently from an engineering perspective?
Not really. I don't know.
Do you like ones with less high curbs because it doesn't damage the floor?
Not Monaco, please, not Monaco.
All street circuits are great to watch. I really like Baku. But like anything with a little bit more runoff is okay for me. If you're gonna, I'd rather you not rally it into a wall.
So Qatar.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, all of them are great. Like, I wouldn't change any of them. But like, that's kind of the least of my worries. I mean, Monaco's great as well. Obviously, less good based on the size of the cars now. But yeah, I probably Baku's one of my favorites.
If you could make some changes to the cars, knowing what you know based on like engineering, reliability, this show, is there anything you'd like to see in the future? Or you would like, I've got a magic wand. Let's change this. It's then more of an engineer's formula, or this is really going to help the racing.
That's a very difficult question. I think, to be honest, these current regulations are actually kind of nailed on what they were trying to achieve. So I did a bit of work at university on looking at the kind of success of these new rules and kind of what they were actually set out to achieve.
Yeah.
So one of the main things they looked to eliminate was kind of these overly complex engineering solutions for something that could actually just be eliminated. So things like getting rid of the Y250 vortex, like there is some invisible. Sorry, do you guys? I don't want to like mansplain.
That went straight over my head. Is that wait? Can I guess based off of the name, and then I'll get Ash to guess as well.
Yeah.
So is that obviously I'm going to guess that it's the direction of the air or dirty air that comes off of the back wing / into the next driver's behind line.
Nah. Sorry.
I was going to say the front wing that goes around outside to make it cleaner air for the underside.
Almost. So slightly. So the old front wings where they all converge in that kind of sharp point on the middle.
Yeah.
So that was 250 millimeters away from the center line of the car. So that's called the Y250 vortex. And what that did was slight aerodynamics lesson for you. So the way a wing works is that there's high pressure on the top and low pressure on the bottom. That's why you get downforce. And when it comes to an edge, those high pressure and low pressure mix, and they form what's called a vortex. So they're constantly spinning around each other over and over and over again, chasing each other. And you have that on your own 4 elements. You get a really, really strong, powerful vortex, which is really, really turbulent air. And that's why barge boards were used. So barge boards were used to direct and shape that air. And then what that did was guide it around the side of the floor and seal off the floor. So you had a much more efficient floor. And that was essentially what they did. But again, that's like invisible engineering. And it also created loads and loads of dirty air behind. And they so getting rid of that, I specifically looked at the front wing and how the change did that, and it massively helped. So now a lot of the regulation stuff is around fun, like moving air inboard and having less dirty air creating aerodynamic devices. So getting rid of that front wing, a lot of it relying on the floor. So the floor becoming a really, really powerful aero device is one of the best bits of these regulations, and it's opened up some really interesting channels for engineering. But if I was back to the question, if I was going to change anything, I would add more cars to the grid for sure. Everyone wants to see more people racing.
Great answer. There's also more jobs, more drivers, more action.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think that in terms of the regulation stuff, the FIA have a lot of people working on that. There is a big team deciding how that works, and also involves the teams. The creation of the rules always involves consultation with the teams. So I don't think I could say anything that would actually improve the sport, but I would definitely make it easier for teams to get on the grid. I think it's really, really gutting to see people like Andretti and High Tech and
Thank you.
God,
I'm just going to back out now because Jacob and Andretti are like a match made in heaven.
even people like Lucky Sons, if you know who they are, like that. I think it's great that people are trying to get on the grid, and why would you not want to see more people race? It doesn't make sense to me.
Politics,
Yeah, sadly,
it's money. That's what it all boils down to at the moment, which is a real shame. But yes, you're right. More teams, please. Thank you.
Yeah, but Andretti, just keep an eye on Andretti. Keep an eye on Andretti.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we've not heard the last of them.
Oh, please God, no.
Don't worry.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Obviously, that gets sorted. But I know, obviously, there was the whole thing around like, oh well, we invited you to a meeting, but then the meeting ended up in your junk email box and stuff like that. And it's just, there's so many things where it's just like, how on earth can billion-dollar companies mess up with something so simple? It's really frustrating.
Yeah, but also, if Formula One wanted them to be on the grid, they'd be on the grid. There's, oh, you missed an email, but that's not a reason to reject an entry.
It's bad. It's not great, is it?
No, it's not. It's not.
But what for you is the perfect amount of teams? I'm imagining you don't want it to be like 30, but I'm also imagining you don't want it to be 10 as it is now.
I mean, just like if there are financially and economically viable teams like Andretti, like High Tech potentially, why not? If you can afford to race, if you can prove that you're adding value to the sport, then I think you should be allowed to race. I don't think there is a perfect amount of teams, but I think we don't want to dilute a talent pool either. You'll always have 4 or 5 teams that are running the grid, but I don't think that should mean you're taking on kind of pay drivers at the back of the grid. I don't think that should happen. I also think there is so much talent in F2. For example, I think it's an absolute travesty that people like Ollie Behrman aren't in an F1 seat, or Oscar Piastri wasn't in an F1 seat for so long, and who else? There's so many examples. There's so many examples you could think of. Liam Lawson, there should be enough places for these people. I think it's really gutting that people with more money are essentially getting a drive than people like Liam Lawson, who have proven above and beyond that they are definitely good enough for Formula One. So I would like to see at least two more teams on the grid would be great. I think 4 more seats, I think you would really open up a lot of opportunity, and I think it would really help prove actually the standard of some of the other teams. Because if you can bring in a new team and you're immediately above a back marker, then you can't be like, okay, well, what's that back marker doing there? what are they actually putting into the sport? When are they just a bad team? So I think there's a lot of questions to it. I could probably talk about this for an hour or so, but I don't think there's a perfect solution.
No, that was the perfect answer. I like you, Charlie. That was a great answer. So I know that there was also there was a suggestion that I heard about over the weekend as well, that apparently we shouldn't be surprised if Audi come into the sport, obviously after taking over Sauber as of, is it next year, a year after? I can't remember exactly.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, doesn't matter. But apparently we should not be surprised, and I quote, if they are on the podium within their first season. That's what I'd heard. Sounds outrageous considering where Sauber are at the moment. Mm-hmm. However, how realistic to you would it be if a team literally came in and were, maybe not on the podium every week, but were competing solidly?
Fair enough, fair play. I think you kind of have to. There's no, it would be surprising. But it's not like it's a brand new team. It's not like it's Andretti, who have actually never raced in Formula, though they have a fantastic, or like High Tech, who have only done Formula 2. It's not, or Andretti, who have only done every other form of racing possible. It's not. They're not them. They're not one of these teams. They are a fully fledged Formula One team with now backing from a massive project in Audi. So I think it would be surprising, but I wouldn't rule it out. Stranger things have happened. They might produce an absolute rocket ship of a car. Their engine might be unbelievable. They're building from the ground up in terms of their engine department. So who knows what they'll achieve? And I'm just looking forward to seeing what they do achieve. Whether that's podiums in the first few races, as long as we're up there beside them, I won't mind.
Good answer, yeah.
Otherwise, I think we should limit them and limit their power unit and limit how much money they have and do all that. If we're not up there with them.
Exactly, sure. Yeah, that's perfectly fair enough.
Yeah, reasonable, yeah.
And I guess as a follow-on, because we talked about money a little bit, cost cap, are you a fan or no? Because I wanted to put it to you because I guess you've got an inside view of maybe not how it was before, but how it is now, and I'm sure it must come up in conversations.
Yeah. I mean, so there's actually two cost caps. So there's capex and opex. So that's capital expenditure and operational expenditure. So I think it's good. I think the steps that are being taken to kind of equalize. So when there was that capex equalization budget release, essentially, we got there was some money that went out to other teams, unlocked a little bit of budget. And we get to see where that is spent, which is quite interesting. So I think I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. Most teams use all of it. I don't know about some other teams, some of the smaller teams. I don't know if they actually use the full budget, but most teams do. So
you might not be allowed to say it, but we can say Haas. That's fine. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not getting you in trouble, I promise.
No, you're not. But certainly, everyone is playing to the same set of rules, to the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And I think it certainly purifies the sport a little bit. There's no kind of Saudi Arabian cohort coming and dumping £500 million into a team, and they can just go and spend on having a brand new wind tunnel in 30 days. There's none of that, which is good. So I think that's certainly a positive step. And I think it kind of allows for quite a natural progression and development for each team, rather than we're all fighting to stay under the cost cap, rather than oh god, we've got 10 million we need to spend.
What do we do? Buy pens quick. There's nothing like that.
Catering issues.
Yeah, how is your catering, by the way?
It's actually a fantastic canteen.
Oh, brilliant! That's good.
It is. That honestly, if you ask anyone who works at Alpine, the first thing they'll say is, "Yeah, not bad. Great canteen."
Nice.
It's very good. Yeah, cooked breakfast every morning is dangerous, but also an on-site gym, so I kind of got no excuses.
Nice.
What's the races have increased over the years?
Yep.
What has that impact had on people on the team? Like people that go trackside, people that work in the operations. It's like, it's more weekends. It's now more races at night. Like most people will go in, do 9 to 5, weekends off and go home. And it's like, we'll just drop another race in the calendar. Oh, right, that's another weekend gone kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice, I guess, people make to work in Formula One, but what's the consensus around that?
I mean, if you're trackside, your actual working week is very different. Like you fly out on the Wednesday and you come back on the Sunday, and then your Monday, Tuesday, it's essentially your weekend. Whereas if you work in operational, so the trackside, so the factory-based strategy guys, they have the worst of it all because they have to, work. They can work as much as they physically can. And then if it's like Australia, for example, and you've got to work during FP1, FP2, quali, if there's a sprint, and then the race, it's actually quite brutal. Then I do think, I'm not actually sure, but I would hope they get maybe to take the Monday off. But it's certainly difficult. From production side of stuff, we are constantly trying to get things out to the track, and constantly trying to push and actually make enough stuff. We have a lot of what are called minimum quantities that we have to viably race. And a perfect example of that is Williams at the weekend with them losing a chassis.
There's going to be a follow-up question of mine, like how often has it been like that where you don't really know if you're going to have a spare front wing or floor or whatever it is?
Well,
like
you know until something happens, basically. So if everything's on time, it's fantastic. It'll make it. But like I haven't seen a single part made on the car that hasn't had like a hiccup in like a major aero component, for example, like the front wing. There's always teething issues, with your first revision. When you get to the second one, there's always stuff you can't predict. So it's not as simple as like it's just an increased amount of stuff. There's a lot to it. There's a lot that changes with more races, but it just gets very, very tight, and you have a limited window in which you want to be able to get an upgraded part out, to be able to use it for as long as you wanted to use it, to be able to gather enough data, to be able to kind of justify your next revision of a part. So that's what you're fighting for. You're fighting to get a new revision out as early as possible. But it's not always as simple as when it's done, it's done. There's a lot more that has to be considered, and there's a lot of deadlines that have to be hit, and you can kind of track something through and say, oh, okay, it's spent way too long here. That's not going to make freight. But making like it's not. I need to be careful. I don't need to be careful here, but like stuff. Okay. I'll
you don't have to. You don't have to.
You're good. Honestly, let me change it up.
I'm trying to work out how much this is public knowledge or not. Basically, all F1 teams do this. I know all F1 teams do this. I'll decide whether I can ask you to cut this later or not. People take like rear wings out in hand luggage. Like that's
okay. Like I've worked at companies where that has happened with prototype bits and pieces as well. Like it used to happen at Microsoft all the time.
Yeah. You take.
I know people at DHL, and they have specific people who just wait around in case they need to transfer a part over.
Yeah. So there's you have those in F1 teams. You have visa victims. So you have people. Who
oh my god.
Yeah. So you have people who have like a powerful passport, and can go just about anywhere pretty unrestricted, and they'll take parts out on like a Thursday night. And then just like arrive to the track, drop it off, and turn around and go home. So it's pretty brutal if that's like Australia.
That's a bit mad. You touched on it a little bit. Sprint races. Are you a fan as a fan? And in the factory, are they really annoying because it can just ruin your Sunday? Or what's your opinion on it?
Relatively impartial.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's something else to watch.
True.
I'm more of a fan of like Saturday races. I think they're great.
We really enjoyed them as well. It was something a bit different, right?
They're much better. But like sprint races, and like they're just a bit like it'd be more fun if it was like F2 and like reverse grid. I think that'd be great. But like right now, it's just like okay, it's 30 laps. It's going to be exactly the same as it's going to be for the first 30 laps tomorrow. Like it's.
A procession, I think, is what it's been referred to as a couple of times.
It's not. I could do without it. It just is what it is.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I suppose it is another opportunity to break something. So
true, but it's also another opportunity to get points if you're one of the fastest 8 cars, which is really incentive for people who finished 19th and 20th. Like that's not.
We'll get data on those new revisions.
Yeah, data. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
getting data, but just do that but like, I guess so. But I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered about them at all.
I guess that we've been chatting now for 45-ish minutes, I want to say, so I don't want to take up too much more
it's fine.
of your time.
Not doing anything.
So. Oh, okay, well, fair enough. But I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But do we have any, Ash, do you have any final questions before we start wrapping it up?
Your team principal.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your 2 drivers? Who's your chief designer?
What a difficult question. I think drivers. I would put Albon and
If you say Verstappen, by the way, we're going to say pick somebody
No.
else because that's obvious.
no, I would put
Remember your team principal. You gotta manage these two as well.
Yeah.
no. I want Albon and I want God, this is really difficult. I want to go someone a little bit rogue. Albon, maybe Liam Lawson, maybe no Piastri. Yeah, I'd have Piastri.
I guessed in my head you were going to say Piastri.
Yeah, I'd have
Nice.
Piastri. Chief designer for who would I have? I mean, I'd obviously have Adrian Newey, wouldn't I? I don't know. I don't really know any other designers. Don't think anyone does.
James Allison.
James Allison is another good one. Yeah.
You seen it Renault for a bit.
Who's the bloke?
was, yeah.
Who's the Aston Martin bloke?
Rob something.
Rob. Yeah, I can't remember his last name. Yeah.
Not Bob Bell. You're not him. No,
Never
okay,
heard
that's
of that
fine.
bloke before. I'm afraid. No.
That's you. You should be ashamed of yourself and go and Google who he is.
I will
Straight away.
Google him right now.
Do that, and you're going to be quite embarrassed. He's a very, very important figure in Formula One.
His Wikipedia tells me he has 2 children, and that's about all I know about him. Oh, okay, cool. So McLaren, Benetton, Jordan, Renault, Mercedes, and Marisha.
Well, more importantly, he was a technical director when Alonso was winning his championships.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool.
He's actually just moved to Aston Martin in an advisory role, which is I don't know who else I'd have. I don't think it'd be a very good Formula One team, but we'd certainly try. We'd certainly try very hard.
Amazing. And then one final question from me. We spoke before the recording about your Lego McLaren. How was like the building experience of that, and is there a car that you really like to see made in Lego? Because I guess obviously you again have a slightly different perspective because you are quite literally building the cars, but you can also build them at home, if that makes sense. Like,
I would like to see like a Dakar rally Lego car. I think that'd be really cool.
I think there's an Audi one. I think
If
there
there
is.
If there is, my bank account is about to be not very happy with me. But building it, it's actually, I like to say anatomically, it's quite accurate to a Formula One car. Like, I couldn't, kind of, and also there's also some places that are like that's just not right. I'd really like to see like a Lego F1 car that is like super accurate to actually how an F1 car is constructed.
I just sent you a link, and I have broken your bank account. I do apologize.
No.
Yeah, no, I thought I'd ask because I'm also a big Lego fan. I picked up the MP4-4 that came out a couple of weeks ago, and I have I literally have it sat next to me if I don't rip the front wing off with a cable. But I have like the little McLarens and stuff as well, which is always cool. I'm a nerd, so of course I'd love to chat about that.
Of course.
But yeah, I'd really like to see like some of the older like classic, like properly classic ones.
I think the Senna one that's just come out is pretty cool. That's really, really cool. Some of them, I actually don't know how they would even exist in Lego. But I could probably would have said that about a Formula One car, and now they exist in Lego. They're pretty cool. I think they're for me it was I was like, this is cool. This is really cool.
Awesome.
And surprisingly accurate to an actual F1 car. Nice.
I know that they have like ridiculous amounts of meetings around like how to make it not only like an enjoyable play experience, but also make it reasonably accurate. So it's amazing how detailed those processes are. But
it's very cool. It's difficult buying that as soon as the Mercedes comes out.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Mercedes as well, and I'm like, that's
slightly different. I mean, for me, I've been interested in looking at like actually the difference in the two cars.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I think the Mercedes is a little more accurate than the McLaren from my standpoint.
Yeah, I think you might be right, especially because obviously it was like a mid mix of like old livery and then the last generation of cars and stuff like that. So yeah, it's
kind of cool.
It's also kind of cool, yeah.
But the Mercedes is pretty smart.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm gonna end it there because I also feel like Google Hangouts is gonna kick us out in a couple of minutes. Authentic, remember? Authentic, not professional, authentic. But thank you so much for chatting with us. I genuinely really appreciate you coming on and chatting with the two of us. If you are still listening, and do you want to shout out your Instagram or anything like that? Are you that bothered, or do you want people to leave you alone? Fair enough, cool. Well, in that case, I will take up that time and ask everyone to go ahead and rate and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Or if you decided to watch this on YouTube, go ahead and drop a subscribe. Drop a subscription. Jesus Christ, it's been a long day. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Again, really, really appreciate it. And of course, the best of luck for the rest of your internship.
Thank you very much.
The best of luck for you and the team for the rest of the season. Looking forward to seeing them push back up the grid.
Let's hope so, yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, Charlie. Want to see you on Drive to Survive soon.
Wow. I'll be hiding. No, you won't see Drive to Survive. I'll be skedaddling if there's a camera in the office.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.